All
We
right,
are
we're live.
live. Instead of coffee, I have kombucha today. What are you
Oh, you know
drinking?
what? I don't like kombucha, but I like that one.
This this one
That
tastes
brand.
more like mead to me, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm
Kombucha
not
to me
sure.
is vinegar, and it's like, ugh, that's disgusting. But
Uh,
that stuff I can tolerate.
yeah, there's a lot of different brands I like, but I like the taste.
The
Anyway,
wild card.
hello everyone.
It's now officially noon. We can kick it off.
Never knew.
Go ahead.
Welcome to Blunt and Biased. I am Dr. Katie Schneller. I have a naturopathic medical practice in Tempe, Arizona, and I focus a lot on gut health, autoimmune health, women's issues. And today we are talking about hormone cycling, specifically seed cycling, and kind of how to regulate your cycles naturally. And we'll see what we're able to cover in 30 minutes. But first, my co-host, Ms. Teresa Paganini.
Hi, everybody. I own Love Yourself Lean. I'm a health coach, behavioral change specialist. And what I do is I help people that struggle with maintaining their weight loss due to various self sabotaging reasons, fears, belief systems, derailers. And all of it stems from a weakness in their own self love. And so when we develop love of self, it's like a superpower. And then we will do what it takes to develop the life, the mindset, and the body that we deserve. And so that's how I work with people. Weight loss through mindset is the easiest way to say that. So
Yay.
I'm super excited. So I have some experience with seed cycling eons ago, and so I'm just so excited about this topic because I think so many women have irregular periods, or
Yeah.
and not just periods. I'm gonna throw you for a loop because I want us to talk about PMS because I know there's natural remedies for that too.
Yeah.
But so many of us don't want to be on birth control. We don't want to be on medication. And so knowing that there's other ways to handle it is going to be super exciting. So go,
Yeah.
Dr. Katie.
Ready, set, go. Yeah, I don't know where to begin. I mean, I like to give handouts to my patients sometimes when it's indicated. So I have my own handout and we can go through that, and that might make the most sense. It doesn't look like we had a viewer there for a second, so I don't think we have any questions to start with. Do you have a specific question first, or should I just jump in?
So I always like to take us back to the very beginning. So when we say
Yeah.
regulating the period, let's talk a little bit about that. What does it mean to be irregular? Why would we want to regulate it? Why don't we just let the body do its thing? Like, help me
Mhm.
understand kind of the why behind this is important.
Yeah, sure. So, menstrual cycles are super variable, and it's pretty common for it to be abnormal, for your cycle to be abnormal. But the standard cycle, like when we say cycle, we're not just talking about period when you're bleeding, we're talking about your entire cycle. So, most of the time, that's averaging between 28 and 32 days. What that means is day one is your first day of bleed. Most women bleed for, 4 to 7 days. That's average, right? So already we have two different definitions of irregular cycles, whether it's shorter than that average 28 to 32 days, or whether you're bleeding for longer or less time than 4 to 7 days. Those are both different types of irregular menstrual cycles. Um, and then you hit most women ovulate on or around day 14 of their cycle. So again, day one's bleed, you bleed for a little while, then you stop, nothing's going on. Then day 14, ovulation. And then after that, you hit the second half of your cycle. Yeah, there are lots of rooms and lots of reasons for cycles to be irregular. Sometimes medication or birth control really is the only thing that helps. There are all sorts of reasons why people get on oral forms of birth control, the IUD. Maybe we could do a birth control uh, seminar because there's so much information about those, all the different varieties. And I was complaining just this morning to my boyfriend that it's not really fair that women have to bear the brunt of making sure that babies don't come into the picture. The fact that there's not male birth control is total BS. But anyway,
Then we would have to trust them that they're taking it. We would still have to take our own, because we'd be like, are you on it? Do you take it when you're supposed to? Are you really being
Yeah.
responsible with it? And none of us would trust them. So we'd be on our own anyway. So I'm like,
Yeah. Well, let me bring up, I know, just because it'll help with kind of like the introduction of things here. So let me share my screen. Okay. You can see this, yeah?
yeah, I need to make my screen.
Okay. So, yes. So, this is a document that I have, a handout that I have, and it comes from kind of a compilation of resources that I've accrued over the years. So, very basically, right, like some of the things I've already answered, the menstrual cycle. The words menses and month actually come from the Greek word mene, which means moon. So some women refer to their menstrual cycle as their moon cycle. And we kind of tease them for being, hippie or woo woo, but truly that's where the word comes from. Women's menstrual cycle and the moon have an interesting relationship. Studies have shown that more women start their menstrual cycle around the new moon. Furthermore, the lunar cycle relating to the moon is 29.5 days long, and the average cycle of women is about 28 days long. Same kind of relationship. So when you think about it, right, the moon manipulates oceans. We're made of mostly water. Why wouldn't the moon affect our menstrual cycles? And I kind of joke that sometimes my patients get a little more cray right around the full moon. So, like I mentioned, a normal menstrual cycle is from 21 to 35 days long, the most average being 28 to 32. And this graphic, let me try to make it bigger. This is kind of what I was referring to already, just with a lot more detail. So here on the x-axis, we have 0 days, the 14 days, and 28 days. So basically days measuring, and then different parts of what's going on throughout the cycle on the y-axis. So the first half of your menstrual cycle is your follicular phase, and this is going to be important to remember later when we talk about seed cycling. The second half is called your luteal phase, and the way that this particular graph is written, they're showing the menstrual cycle at the end, but it can really be put over here towards the front as well. So basically days 0 through 14, what's happening is your ovaries are releasing a follicle, it's growing, and whether it's impregnated or not, that's what happens when you're either going to get your cycle or, of course, you continue developing the follicle. Your basal body temp, that's what some women try to regulate. Notice the spike here right around day 14. What happens when you're most fertile? Your basal body temperature elevates just slightly, sometimes by a whole degree, sometimes by even less. So anyone regulating their menstrual cycle using only basal body temp might find that a little bit difficult. And here's what's going on from the anterior pituitary, which is in your brain. You have a spike of luteinizing hormone and a follicle stimulating hormone right on day 14. And towards the beginning half of your cycle, you have more estrogen, and then the second half, you have more progesterone. So again, this becomes relevant when we're talking about seed cycling, because certain seeds and certain foods help to promote estrogen, certain help to promote progesterone. And then here's just what's going on with the uterine lining, and that's, cellular, and kind of, we don't need to get into all of that, but hopefully that helps to kind of break it down in more of a graphic area. You can see how much is going on all at the same time during particular parts of our cycle. But do you have any questions yet, Teresa, or audience?
I don't. We had audience. You got yourselves a thumbs up, but no, I don't have any. This is when I just want to say, hey, boys, you just feel very grateful you don't go through all this.
Yeah. Although they do have some hormonal shifting as well.
Oh, don't we know, ladies?
Right.
They have a menopause, or menopause.
Yeah.
They're man period. But I'm one of 4 kids, and 3 of the 4 are boys. I was the only girl, and I was a little pissed about that, all because of this. But
oh my gosh.
Tell us more, Dr. Katie.
Yeah. So just like before we get into seed cycling, as I mentioned just for a few minutes. There are different ways of regulating your cycle. Doing something like seed cycling is not the same as you being on birth control. It does not prevent pregnancy. It doesn't guarantee that you won't get any STIs. Of course, neither does birth control. So some women like to do this to help balance their PMS. So that does speak, Teresa, to, kind of your first question, which was that, what does that have to do with this? When we think of PMS, technically, that's right before you bleed. So some women have all sorts of different symptoms once they get their period, but then there's a whole other slew of symptoms which are technically PMS just by definition. And that's what we're referring to when we talk about PMS. So you can help regulate what's going on in your cycle and help regulate your PMS symptoms and your symptoms that you experience during bleed by doing things like seed cycling. There are tons of herbs too, and but we can talk about that later. So, new moon, full moon, just to orient. Follicular phase was when estrogen was dominant. So, this is the first 14 days right before ovulation on day 14. And then we get into the luteal phase where progesterone is more dominant. Let me pause there again, because before we get into the different types of seeds, and you can see them right there, we'll talk about preparation here in a second as well. But if your period is irregular and you're already on birth control, even if you're not on some form of birth control, which is supposed to be regulating your cycle, if you're having issues with cycle regulation, seed cycling is a really nice thing to do. The way that you might know that your cycle is irregular is if you're outside of those normal limits. So if your cycle is shorter or longer than the average, about 28 to 32, and sometimes it comes soon, and sometimes it comes later. Sometimes you bleed for 10 days, sometimes you bleed for 3 days. One of the most important hormones, yes, of course, estrogen is important, but one of the most important hormones that tells your body when to start and stop bleeding is progesterone. So what that means is if you are having irregular cycles, anything like I just mentioned, you might have low progesterone or you might have too much progesterone. It's really interesting. It kind of the similar issue in your cycle can come from either too much or too little progesterone. You want just enough. And when you're getting your blood work drawn, unless you're doing fertility labs, the best day of your cycle to have your blood drawn for progesterone is day 21 of your cycle. That's when progesterone is the highest. So when we draw your blood that day, we'll figure out, do you have enough? Do you have too little? So if you don't come to see me and you get your blood drawn somewhere else, make sure that your provider, who probably knows, but best day to draw is day 21 of your cycle. So let's get into this just a little bit more. Days 1 through 14, right? This is where new moon's transitioning into full moon. The seeds that you want to focus on and consume more are flax, pumpkin, and chia seed. And do keep in mind here, it says 1 to 2 tablespoons spoons of ground, 1 to 2 tablespoons of ground seeds, these 3 seeds per day. So that's daily. You can do this all together. You can buy your chia seed or your flax seed already ground, but it actually has less nutritional value if it's been ground for a long time. So the best thing to do is to buy the whole seed, especially for flax, and then grind it on your own. And you can buy a spice grinder off Amazon for, $20 or something. The reason that go ahead.
So is it 1 to 2 tablespoons each or total?
Each.
Each.
Yes,
and
yes, each.
The recommendation is to have all 3, not one or.
Correct. All 3. Yeah. Yep. And this would be every day. So this could be in a smoothie. This could be on a salad, however you like it. You always want essential fatty acids. Pretty much a standard rule of thumb is if you're not eating fish at least 3 times a week, if not probably more than that, considering the nutritional content of all sorts of things are declining, that includes fish, then you want to be on an omega source. There's really next to no harm in that unless you have a blood thinning problem or you're going to go into surgery soon. I put most of my patients on fish oil or flaxseed oil, some type of omega source. Algae works as well. But ultimately 2 to 3 grams of fish oil per day. So this means 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams, just for those of us that don't like math. That's most of the time the way that the labels are for your standard fish oil. um, we could talk about quality of supplements too at some point, but buying them from places like Costco, you get a lot of them, but in order to get that amount, you have to take a lot during the day as well. So I believe like the Costco brand, you have to take like 6 caps to get the proper serving size. I know it's a lot, and it's fish oil, right? So you can get fish burps. Tiny side note there though,
Always.
something that helps that is freezing your capsules. Doesn't always work, but it can help in case anyone out there suffering from fish burps from fish oil.
Yeah, I used to take mine right before bed, so I just sleep through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then wake up with fish burp mouth.
Well, it's not like I burped in my sleep. It didn't do it. Like almost all supplements make me nauseous, so I always have to take them before bed, so I sleep through the nausea.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense too. That works too. Yeah. And there's no certain time of day for these, by the way, for seeds. So that's a good point. So this particular seed and essential fatty acid combination helps support the estrogen dominant time of your cycle. Specifically, it contains a lot of EPA, which is one of the omega-3 sources. There's EPA and there's DHA. You want EPA more towards the first half, this again, day 1 through 14, where estrogen is dominant, focusing on flax, pumpkin, and chia seed. It's anti-inflammatory. It helps to decrease pain and keeps your cell walls healthy. So that's kind of the why behind those seeds. Anything else before jump into the second half, which people have already read and written down and good to go?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. The full moon transitions into the new moon for the luteal phase. This is the second half of your cycle, days 15 through 28 on average. 1 to 2 tablespoons each of ground sesame and sunflower seeds per day. Then as far as the essential fatty acids go, you want again 2 to 3 grams of fish oil plus 1 gram of evening primrose oil or borage oil, which is an omega-6. The reason that you might want EPO or BO, not body odor, right, but borage oil, is because gamma linoleic acid is really high in those. And again, anti-inflammatory and helps to treat part of your PMS. So that sounds wrong, right? That we're trying to treat PMS through the luteal phase. But remember, what PMS is your symptoms before day 1, which is where you start bleeding.
And mine lasts 2 weeks. So like mine do start almost like mine are 2 weeks long.
You bleed for 2 weeks?
No, God, no. I bleed for 2 days. My PMS is 2 weeks long.
Oh, I see.
It's like forever. So I'm like, yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I could see how this would be beneficial to start it,
Yeah.
that switch immediately, right, at the full moon point, because
Yes.
it does last forever for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe some seeds. Focus on sunflower and sesame. And so this wouldn't mean that you need to avoid flax or anything for the second half of your cycle, for example, but really just focusing on getting 1 to 2 tablespoons. And the reason that it varies is because people's tolerance varies and people's diet vary. And so you can start with 1 tablespoon each for all 3 of the first seeds and then 2 of the second, or you can start at 2 for all 3 and 2 tablespoons for the latter 2, if you can tolerate it. Okay. You don't have to totally avoid pumpkin and chia and flax if you're in your luteal phase, or avoid sesame and sunflower if you're in your follicular phase. But focusing on getting daily intake of these particular seeds can be really helpful to regulate the cycle.
Now, since the fiber isn't really in question, but more of the fatty acid, like if I use tahini or if I use sesame oil, does that count, or does it have to be the ground seed?
You're still getting some of the property, but the reason that you that doesn't necessarily count is because it's not just the seed, like with the strongest concentration of those particular of EPO and borage oil.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see what other goodies we have here. Oh, I have some focus on like workouts.
So if you have questions, throw them in the chat, right? So for whoever's watching right now, as you have questions, don't hesitate. I'm asking whatever questions I have or think people have, but I'd love to see yours.
Yeah, for sure. I have a bunch of things about menopause. Oh, so maybe this might be nice. So eradicating the narrative that periods are gross and embarrassing. I work with my boyfriend's youngest boy who's 12, and he talks, he sometimes had issues with period things and talking about tampons and things like that. And so, um, I personally take it upon myself to make sure that, of course, my patients feel comfortable talking about anything, but especially that we kind of get rid of the grossness of menstrual cycles and the way that they're perceived. I mean, half of the population has a period. It should be normalized at this point. I went to New Zealand in college, and the culture over there, the Maori culture, is that when you're on your period, you're considered toxic and you can't touch plants because they believe that you will poison them and kill the plant, basically. And I remember just feeling so offended by that. But some cultures are different. But here I really try to empower women to feel comfortable to talk about their bleeding and talk about poops and talk about things that are bodily functions. So anyway,
I'm not talking.
I know, off my soapbox. Like I had said before, so here are some myths. Basically, the first one is a menstrual cycle is the same as a period, right? And that's what I talked about at the very beginning. It's not the exact same. We kind of use those words interchangeably, but your menstrual cycle is the entire cycle, the 28 to 32 days long. Dysmenorrhea means like painful or irregular periods. It is an actual medical diagnosis. Period pain is real, and around 20% of women have it severely enough that it affects their activities of daily life. And that's kind of when doctors take symptoms strongly, not that we don't trust you otherwise. That's our literal point, is to listen to how you feel. But because of how pervasive this is, dysmenorrhea occurs when you can't do your normal activities, when you can't go to work, when you're laid up in bed, when you can't exercise, when you're bleeding so heavy that you're bleeding through your pads and through your clothes. These are all things that count as dysmenorrhea. Mood shifts are all in your head, right? We give a lot of women, we're like, oh, is it that time of the month? Well, maybe, because it's not really up to us. What happens is in the fourth kind of quarter, right? So in the second half of the last cycle before day one, that's when estrogen plummets and progesterone increases. Estrogen is linked to serotonin, which is the happy hormone, and progesterone is linked to fear, anxiety, and depression. So, really, basically, all of that to say your feelings are totally valid during this time, and you're not alone. And most of it is hormonal, and it's not your fault. And question? Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
So two, as a health coach that deals in weight management, right? Two areas that really affect my clientele is one, the severe mood shifts that happen throughout the entire menstrual cycle, not even just right before, but the depression, the elation, the ups, downs, right? And so food ends up, we chase that rush, and so we chase food. And then the weight gain, right? The bloating, the cravings, the I want chocolate so bad I can't see straight. Like, these are the different things that affect my clientele. Does the seed cycling help regulate that?
Yes. Yes,
Good
it
news,
certainly
clients.
can.
Good news.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of tricks for some of the cravings too. Some part of the PMS chocolate craving part is because you are deplete of magnesium. And so you take it, sometimes taking magnesium can help with chocolate cravings. Not all the time, but if you have relationship with food problems, that's when you go see Teresa. So men give us lots of shit, right? But they do have periods, actually. They have hormonal fluctuations too. They're also made of water. They just do not bleed. There was a study done on male contraceptives, and I love talking about this. This kind of ropes back right into what I said at the beginning, where I was giving my boyfriend crap that women have to do all the birth control stuff on their own. But there was a study with male birth control, basically, and the study was discontinued because the participants couldn't handle the side effects. Acne, injection pain, emotion changes. That was kind of what men were suffering from during that study. But I think we suffer all the time. But anyway, men do have periods, and we try to regulate them. one other myth, I know we're almost out of time here, is that period blood is like dirty blood. So actually, it's very little blood. It's mixed with uterine tissue, mucosal lining, and bacteria. So it's actually less concentrated blood. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that it's delicious, right? For that's gross. It's not palatable, certainly, but it's not very much blood, right? It is your uterine tissue, mucosal lining, bacteria, and a little bit of blood. And then finally, we should feel shame about this process. This is just what I've been saying. No, there is a very long history to overcome, as well as some cultural stigmas, one that I mentioned when I visited New Zealand. But we don't need to whisper about needing tampons or hide our period conversations from men. This is a human topic. Periods are what help keep our hormones balanced. Having regular periods slows aging, reduces your risk for cardiovascular disease, and of course, like, it's what lets us know that we're not fertile. So it's super important. And my belief is that it should be normalized. And if you're somebody who needs help regulating your cycle for any reason, or who wants to talk about periods, I'm always down.
Dr. Katie loves the topic.
Mhm.
So, Dr. Katie, when we end the stream and it goes live, and
Mhm.
we can add, we can probably even do it now. Are you able to add this document, or are you comfortable sharing this
Um,
document as a link or as a
yeah,
attachment?
yeah, sure.
Especially just that seed cycling picture, like that part is really the part that I think is super important to help people understand, what am I supposed to do, how
Yeah.
much, which seeds, when. Because I know when I did the seed cycling, I kept getting confused. I'm like, what am I supposed to do when? And
Yeah.
we've talked about the fact that I'm a horrible patient. I have the desire to be better. I don't have the desire to do what it takes to be better, which is why I make such a great behavioral change coach, because I get it. I get the struggles. So I
Mhm.
think I did seed cycling for 2 weeks, and I was like, okay, that's way too challenging. I'm not doing this anymore. Because it was tough to figure out how to get these things in my diet every single day.
Yeah.
Right, without necessarily having a salad or a smoothie every single day.
Right.
But that was probably 10 years ago, and my emotions are like this throughout
Mhm.
the month. And so, when you're motivated enough, when it hurts enough, you change.
Right.
So I think this is a great natural option for people that struggle either with irregular periods, irregular moods, crazy PMS, um, crazy bleeding, like all of it. So I think it's pretty cool to know that you don't have to be on birth control to um, regulate the period.
Yeah, yeah. And again, there are some situations where it really is necessary or super helpful to be on hormonal birth control. But even if you're on hormonal birth control, you can still participate in seed cycling. They're not mutually exclusive. It's not, oh, this seed cycling you can't do if you're on birth control. You can do it whether you have the IUD, whether you have the shot, the Depo-Vera, it doesn't matter. The NuvaRing, right? All sorts of different forms of birth control. You can still participate in seed cycling and see if it helps.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
We've got 3 minutes. Our viewer, not sure if you have any questions or experience with seed cycling you want to share. So I know I had one client, Dr. Katie, that she did a combination of vitamin E and primrose oil,
Hmm.
and it eradicated her PMS. Tell me a little bit about vitamin E and its
Vitamin,
place.
yeah, I mean, it helps the immune system. It helps heal. Vitamin E is a necessary vitamin in our diet. Sorry, I got distracted. We got a question. Hey, Gabby, what would you say are some of the best ways to incorporate seeds into your diet? Yeah, so flaxseed is a tough one, I know, for some people because they don't like kind of the earthy taste. And so for me, if I'm trying to get flaxseed in, I really do mask it in a smoothie. And it's a good point, Teresa, that like you don't have a smoothie every day. But some people put it on their breakfast bowls. So like I'll do that as well sometimes. So like if you have rice and veggies and a meat, let's say, you can sprinkle flaxseed on top and you really can't taste it. Some people might do like avocado toast, and you can put your seeds, your ground up seeds that way, and then cover it with, the red pepper flakes or something. It really kind of depends on how you are with intaking it. Technically, you can grind up your seeds and grind it up and stir it up in water and try to chug that, but I think a lot of people would find that kind of gross. So, kind of hiding it in your food. There's lots of different ways. I mean, it sounds silly, but let's say for chia seed, well, you can do chia seed pudding, which is really yummy and delicious. It's not ground, but you'll still get the omegas. But you can put chia seeds mixed in with all sorts of different things and help give it fiber and texture. Chia seed, I don't find really has much of a flavor. So, anything you can hide it in.
Yeah. And I would say
sauce.
this.
Yeah.
So because I don't actually like the texture of chia seeds, it doesn't taste like anything, but the texture grosses me out. I'll make my chia seed pudding with ground chia. It still works.
Yes. Yep.
So you can do that.
Yeah. Hopefully that is helpful. She hearted it, I think. So.
Yeah.
But again, if you we're at the end of our time, so if you ever have any questions, audience, people watching this later, you can always reach out to Teresa or myself, and we'd be happy to answer questions for you. I know that I personally have free 15-minute consults. You can ask me about anything, and I'll do my best to answer you. And Teresa, you've got something similar, yeah?
I do. I have a 30-minute free consult with people as well. Yep.
30 minutes. Oh. Thank you for watching, everybody.
Yeah, super helpful, super great information, Dr. Katie. I appreciate it.
Of course.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See ya.